Well, good morning, everybody. Hey, hey, good to see you. So, who's got a book in them, huh? Let's get them out. Listening to Maina Doe, an Australian artist. She's singing, this is her song, Maybe. She's cool. Discovering new local talent. For those that are joining me for the first time, welcome, welcome. There is no melody about it. It's a great song, right? I love cameras on. Don't feel like you have to, but I love a crowd. Confident player. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Curriculum Coaching. Once or twice a month, what we do is we merge two of our communities. So we have a business school, and the business school runs generally for about 3 years. It's about 25,000 a year. Um, and the idea of the business school is you do a 3-day intensive live with me, and then you turn up each month to a series of weekly tutorials. And every quarter, we put the whole school together for what we call an immersion, which is an online conference. Uh, then we've also got our foundation program, which we've got some people joining from that today. And that's where you sort of take your time over about 4 months is my preferred to learn the curriculum, to get yourself across the information that sits behind the Thought Leaders practice model. And the idea is that, whilst this is not actually everybody's experience, learn the curriculum before you join the school so that we're implementing the curriculum in the school. Now, that's not to say you won't learn. You'll absolutely learn and be stretched in the school. But the idea is to take the time to learn beforehand. So it's great to have both people here, those who are in the school, who I know very, very well because we talk every week. I also provide email mentoring. So people send me reflections. They let me know where they're up to so that when we come together for our tutorials, I already know where you're at. And I've changed the program from, we had 180 people turning up live every quarter. I've dropped it to, I've capped it at 100 people, and I've sort of looked at my capacity to mentor and support people. I also have a great faculty, which are people who've achieved black belt, 720,000 or more. Just last week, we were on our black belt retreat, which happens, it's meant to happen every 2 years, but I want it to happen every year. So we'll be doing it in May next year. I'm just saying that as a shout out, Mehdi, that you and Sam have to get down and do the New Zealand one, and enjoy your trip down there, as others will. The curriculum coaching is an opportunity to deep dive, and I choose a topic and make that the focus of the conversation. And today, I'm going to focus it on book writing, and want to just sort of set some targets beforehand and then unpack sort of 12 steps around a book. Just first of all, with just could everybody go to gallery view for me? If you're in gallery view, you'll see all the beautiful people. So just wave at each other and go, hi, good to see you. Lovely, lovely. Because Joe Clancy, you're going to be black belt too, which means you're coming to New Zealand. Can't wait. We'll drink mojitos and jump off mountains. As we're doing the writing of books, who's already written a book? Thumbs up. Okay, cool. So, first book is a challenge. And what I want to do in this process is take the challenge out of it. And there's some stuff that you will have heard before. I did a version of this not too long ago. But my offer for people in the school is to write the book with me. So as you write your next book, write it with me in this process. So as you do each of these 12 steps, send them through. And what I'll do is I'll review and read them and then provide feedback if it's useful back to you. For those that are in foundation program, see, that's why you want to join the school, which is cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right, let's begin. When you write a book, the first thing we do is we start with a title. And the way I see that is it's like picking up diamonds. You know that story of Acres of Diamonds, like running around collecting diamonds on a field and sort of putting them in a backpack. What you don't want to do is assess. So the pointy end of the diamond, the thing you grab, is what's the title of the book. So my first thing is to say, before you write anything, try and give it a sense of focus. Because I reckon, and this is a little bit like with speeches, if you notice that we all think in our workshops and our speeches that we don't have enough content. So we develop the hell out of them. We then deliver them and we've got too much content. Is everyone cool with that? And that's because it's the experience that people buy, and you realize that the delivery experience is possibly more important or of a higher priority than the content that you're going to provide. Yet when you sit by yourself without someone to deliver it to, all you're thinking of is content. So it's a natural skew and bias. You are going to have too much content. And a lot of people, when they're writing their first book, they go, I don't think I know enough things to fill a book. And I go, no, you do. Don't worry about that. That's just the little mind speaking. In fact, you've one of the key ways that the challenge is not that you don't have enough, it's that you have too much. Now, who already has that sense where you might have too much for one book? Okay, so the title helps because it becomes the pointy end of the diamond. Now, the title needs to be good enough to get you focused, knowing that it probably won't be the end title. I develop my titles in Keynotes. So because I have the opportunity to deliver presentations, I'm behind on my I'm behind on my books. I've written 15, so I don't need the motivational coaching. But on the 5 that I've got sitting in the pipeline, I'm behind on them. And if you go, okay, why are you behind on them? I know a book takes a lot of energy after you've written it. And so what I want is I want my books to be commercially savvy. So I've got a beautiful book called The Leadership Landscape. I've got 52 locations on a metaphoric map, like the Message Mountains, the River Engagement, the City of Culture, the College of Chiefs. So each one of these places, I've got 52 locations and I've had them beautifully illustrated. I've created 12 questions that facilitate that location. I've created a guided imagery, which is sort of like a visualization that helps you sort of imagine it. So beautiful image, beautiful questions, beautiful guided imagery. And I know it's a great book and I really want to get it done. The illustrations are epic. I got a guy called Mofi Wang, who's a international architecture student here in Australia. And I chose a Chinese illustrator because I don't know if you've ever looked at Chinese art. It has energy behind it. So quite often when Chinese art is painted, you can feel the flow of energy in it. It's really beautiful. And so Mofi's done this with the locations. This book is ready to go. I can't monetize it yet. So I'm looking at it and I'm going, write this book, so what? What's the back end on it? And this is the thing I want you to think about with your books. If you're writing a thought leaders book, you're not writing a book that would make your parents proud. You're not writing a book for prestige. Now, it's like a lot of people think they need a PhD or they think that they need to go be a CEO in a business before they can teach leadership. And what we need to do is write a book that makes sense strategically for your practice. So as you're thinking of the title, you're thinking, and this will come back to like the first step is work on your title. So point number 1 of 12, work on your title. Know that it's not going to stay forever, that its job is to omit things because your problem is too much. And that the strap line is probably going to change a lot. My sense is most people, when they start the strap line, so if I just talk about it, the title and the strap line. So I was just talking to Maria de Bruin. She's almost finished her book. She's a blue belt in our community. She's going to go black belt in the next 3 months. I was just talking to her about coming to the Santa Monica intensive. These 3 days are sort of 3 days of strategic mapping. I'm in Santa Monica in July. And Maria's book is Understood, is the title. The strap line is the greatest human need and the key to engagement. Now, I don't know how you felt when I said that, but the greatest human need, full stop, is where that would do. Can everyone feel that? Understood, the greatest human need. Perfect book title. But what every thought leader does is add something on. And the reason you're adding something on is you're thinking it's going to do the selling for you. So can you see by saying the key to engagement, what Maria's wanting it to do is to sell her engagement workshops. And you don't need to do that because it's like business cards. Do you remember when business cards ended up just being like books almost? People would unfold them. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember business cards. They were these things we gave people that had our fax number on it. And do you remember they had a photo, then they had a picture of your book, and then they had 4 bullet points, and then you had to unfold them, and they would never fit in a wallet. And that's when people were trying to make business cards do more than they should. And your book title, like a business card, should just say everything it needs and nothing it doesn't. So if you could work towards brevity, if you can say more with less words, you've smashed it. All right, so titles. Okay, there's going to be 12 of these. That's the first one. And the first and the 12th have a circular relationship. So if you wanted to, you could almost put these in a clockwise direction around a clock and you'd have the idea. But at the 12 o'clock, the first point is this idea of come up with a title. Make sure that you're loose enough that it can change over time, tight enough that it focuses you. I'm just going to pause there. Does anybody just want to give me a little wave and unmute if you want to ask a question or speak about title a little bit? Something might have been coming up for you. Happy to hear from anybody. Okay, Kate and Sam, let's go there and then maybe Liz. We'll get on to the others as well. Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm good. We've been talking about this recently, so really relevant for me. And I was actually thinking for tomorrow is what you and I came up with. And then a very practical person said the other day, Kate Burke's writing a thinking book. And I wondered whether I might just call it the thinking book.
Well, the reason why I challenge you not to is that you're positioning yourself from someone who is an expert in agricultural strategies to someone who is a futurist and will be in any category. So because we know your practice is moving from an expert practice in a market and locked in a market, and we're trying to use this book as a passport to go into other markets, I would put the thinking for tomorrow in because I think it's better for your practice. So that's my short answer, knowing what we're doing for your practice.
Yeah. So I was thinking a byline to cover that would be quality thinking for better futures.
Yeah, that could work. Yep,
Yeah,
that could work.
just a thought.
Thanks. Yeah, as long as you keep your futurist piece in it, I think that'd be great. Yeah. I know I had Liz and I had someone else. I think it was Sam. Hey, Sam, what was coming up for you?
Hi, Matt. So Media and I, we were off last week. We went in mountains. We were working on our fourth draft of our book called
Hang on a sec. Are you telling me that you and Maddie took a holiday?
Oh, it wasn't a holiday. We were just less.
The ongoing joke is that as soon as Sam and Maddie take a holiday, we'll know that it's almost like our work here is done, Maddie. I'll be able to go, okay, boom, you're done. All right, so Sam, by the way, these guys in the US, they do around New York, they do AI for architectural, engineering, and construction businesses, and very successful practice. They're both double PhDs, so they could basically take us to the moon and back. Hey, Sam.
Thank you, Matt. So on our way, the mountain, it was 4 hours drive. We listened to Emma's Queen, Emma's book. It was great, and I recommend it to everyone who's looking for their next book. And with the help from Richard Hutch, we created our own model for the book as well. So we used that model to write our book. So we finished the fourth draft. It's a combination of the strategy, governance, not like AI governance, but governance in terms of how you can be AI powered, and also like how you can implement your strategy. But eventually, once we finished the book, we were like, oh my gosh, we didn't talk enough about the title of the book. So that was like something that we wonder, like how we can keep ourselves focused based on the title of the book, which is called Disrupted. Everything in the book is based on disruption, but we didn't focus enough around the word disruption itself.
What you'll notice is if you don't do a lot of good thinking on the title beforehand, you've got to go back after the fact, and a 40,000 word manuscript needs word replacing. So you do find, replace, and then you find ways to shove the theme into the opening sentence and the opening paragraph. When we get to number 7 of these 12 things, it's that you rewrite based on the title. So we'll get to there in a minute. But the focus on disruption is good. And if you don't have a title, you tend to write books that blow out. So they become 60,000 word books, and you really want your books under 40. Now, regardless of the word count, because I think targets are really important, regardless of the word count, you want the book to have a thickness to it. I'm just looking for, sorry, I've just moved into this location and I don't have all my books. Okay, so these 3 books are all different word counts. I'm just going to hold them up there. This one here by Tyson Yunkaporta is on a very thick stock and very big words with big spacing. These 2, which I wrote, are 15,000 words difference. So this book, which is called Thought Leaders, this book is 45,000 words. And this book, The Thought Leaders Practice, is 50,000 words, which you've all read, I'm assuming. But what we try to do is we want them all to be the same thickness. When people do pamphlets, they stuff up because they don't do the print job right. So word count almost doesn't matter. Between 25,000 and 50,000, and you'll find if you're 35,000 to 50,000, they can all look like this, which is, if you could find a bookstore and you could walk in, pick the ones up and go, yeah, well, that's a book, that's a book, that's a book, that's a book. And then there are others that are pamphlets. Now, I'm not making less of them by calling them pamphlets, but my suggestion is every Thought Leaders Practice needs a practice book, and it needs to have thump value. I went through a divorce a couple of years ago, and the lawyer made a joke, which is obviously a very lawyery joke, where I said, well, how much is it going to cost? And they picked up the binder and went, oh, that's about a $50,000 divorce. And then they went, bump, that's about an $80,000 divorce. And they were not funny. But the thump value of your book is important. And I would want now you can write what's called a cluster book, but I'm like, why bother? Honestly, I think cluster books are just because you don't have the money or the time to get a book out. And I think what you're better off doing, because everything's positioning, is write a 35 to 50,000 word book. So has everyone got that target in mind? Okay. So number 1, come up with a title and shape it. Liz, you did also have something you wanted to speak to into title. Is there anything coming up for you?
Oh man, I was sort of like putting voice in the room about mine, the stable mind, and like I like that, and I love the tagline, and the more I work with it, the more it manages to enable my IP to be discussed and applied. But my concern about the title is I get put into the, the manifesting,
Yeah.
I
wouldn't worry about it in your case too much, Liz. Your body of work is so substantial that I wouldn't be concerned about being positioned into a lightness of being, or into the wrong category. I think having worked with you as you've gone alongside you, as you've built your titles, the stable mind seems to make mindfulness new, and it seems to make leadership composure true. And it informs the good decision-making that sits behind your practice model with boards. So I think the nature of your people who you work with and the body of work you've got means that we don't need to worry about yours being diminished into something small, which gives us the opportunity to go with that. So I feel really good with yours. And I think you should going forward as well. And your newsletters have been, versions of that starting to unpack now. So, but I can understand why you'd think that, but I don't think it's something you need to worry about with your substance. Okay, number 2 is what you want to do is you don't want to write a book. My friend Dale Beaumont, who's written 25 books, he's an alum in our program, so he's a black belt alum who runs a company called Blueprint that helps small businesses find the blueprints for success. And Dale is a beautifully charismatic, influential thought leader who's very, very good at process. But he once said, and when we interviewed him in a thought leaders conference, because he'd written so many books, is we said, hey, Dale, what's the key? He said, you got to think in a series, not a single. And I thought that was really good advice, because when you only have a single book in you, you put too much in it. So once again, our issue is not that you don't have enough to fill a book. It's that you're going to put so much in that the book doesn't have a coherent through line. So the second of the 12 steps is lay it out in a trilogy. All right. So you go, you don't have to write the other two books, but we want their titles figured out just so you know what this one's about. Now, for those in the school, we've done a lot of work on the trilogy project. It's one of the things that we do around what's the evolution, what's the through line between the books, and how do they unpack like a future journey for a potential reader. And it's almost like the strategic trajectory of your work. So everyone cool with number 2? Try and put it as the first of 3. Now, what you might notice is you'll scope 3 out and the book you want to write might be the second one. And that's completely okay because you then go back and write the first one later. But if you have the 3, then you're sort of good to lay that out. Now, we've done a lot of work in the school on this, so I just want to check in. Is that enough and can I move on? Where I'm basically just saying, come up with 3 titles and sort of make this one of a series, not a single book. And that doing the work on that is taking your title thinking next level. And you'll notice that the stuff you discarded on number 1, come up with the title. The stuff that you've discarded might feed the second and third books. Okay. Does anybody want to just speak to trilogy? Anybody who's hearing that for the first time, maybe someone in foundation program who hasn't gone through a trilogy project workshop with me? Yeah. Hi, Pamela. Nice to meet you.
Hi. So I've just joined the foundation program and I'm on the verge of joining the school, but I'm just doing as much as I can. So I wrote my first book called Cracking the Happiness Code. I didn't think that I would be creating sub-series, but it makes sense because my line of work is more being a doctor, but going into different other fields of like nutrition and neuropsychology and things like that. I am suffering from that dilemma, like you're talking about, so much that I want to write and put it in one. For example, the next book that I'm working on is all about emotions, but with a twist of how people think regulating emotions just come from a psychological point of view or whatever. The title I thought of it would be something called as I'm Allowed. So, you know, you're allowed your emotions and how do you regulate them and things like that. The reason of joining the school was exactly that, is that I have so many fields that I have dipped my toes in, assimilating all of it together to contain it into one practice and therefore make this trilogy, which I'm hearing for the first time too. So trying to wrap my head around it as to how do I go about it, or when I first entered the details in the profile, when I joined the foundation program, it did prompt me to write 3 books titles. And I just came up with something random. I thought one was I'm Allowed. Second was, I think, aging is not equal to disease or something of that sort. And I can't remember the third one because I just made it up on the spot. So
what I appreciate you introducing this, Pamela, because it's a really good first challenge. You're writing books around things you know and want to share with the world. And I think that's a beautiful way to be. And also, what we want them to be is commercially savvy. So a book is a strategic door opener. And the current books you're writing talk to everybody who was a human with a body and feelings and about things that we generally have as a need. And what that's setting your practice up to do is to have what's called a public practice as opposed to a professional practice. The distinction's in the curriculum, but I'll just unpack them. On a public one, individuals make decisions to buy on credit card. On a professional one, organizations pay on invoice. And what I would want to talk to you about is there an organizational offer? And the fact that you've written a personal public one, which is Cracking the Happiness Code, is we might want to make your second book one that positions us into the commercial game. An example of someone we could follow is Seth Godin, who's written more than 30 books. So Seth's most famous book is called Purple Cow, which is How to Be Remarkable, and it talks about differentiation for small business owners. So you'd read it and go, okay, so it's a business book for small business owners. Small business owners are quite often a public market. So each individual business owner pays by credit card. But his focus was on being remarkable. And the idea was his kids went, oh, wow, a brown cow, because they'd city kids who'd never seen a cow. And then they get bored and go, oh, yeah, cow. He said what they needed was the next one to be purple, because if the next one was purple, they would have gone, oh, purple cow. So the idea, that was the idea. But it wasn't a corporate book. And so what he had to write, because he wanted to speak on the corporate speaking circuit, is he wrote Linchpin, which is about how to be indispensable. So can you see that the first book, Remarkability, was for a public channel, but Linchpin, about being indispensable, was for the corporate channel. And here's the thing, it's the same idea. It's just lensed around being the linchpin in a machine, which is what an employee was. So my challenge for you, and this is a longer conversation, Pamela, that would unpack over a while, is to scope your body of work so that it's not only reacting to your medical training for individuals around emotional and physical well-being, and we start talking about, well, what else do you know? And you'll go, well, I'm deeply into Advaitic philosophy, or you'll say, I've got this or something, and I go, oh, tell me about that. And so what we'll be able to do is there'll be some other nuance in you that become clear. But something that might help you is to go beyond the trilogy to step number 3. So step number 1, come up with a title. Step number 2, do a trilogy. Step number 3 is that we build out an ecosystem. Now, what an ecosystem is you go from 3 books to 9, and you lay them out in a noughts and crosses or in a tic-tac-toe. So if I sort of do it this way, it's like you build a grid like this. And your trilogy might be A, B, C. They're the 3 books that you've come up with. And then what you do is start to scope out what would other work be. Now, you might go, well, isn't this just coming up with 9 titles? It sort of is. But what I'd like you to see this as is a decade's work. So look forward to the next 10 years and try to organize the books, because what you may find is you may find that the ones that you thought were like these A, B, and C, you might go, actually, you know what? They're not like that. They're like this. They're like this. And you end up putting them in the row. So when you do this, you want to do it with Post-it notes, or you want to do it with little cutout reference cards so you can move them around analogically. I'm using a digital iPad here, but what you want is you want to have an analog card system that you're moving around, or Post-it notes, so you can scrumple them up or put them off to the side. Because if you keep it analog, what you'll be able to do is get perspective on it, and digital is bound. So can you see the way I've written this? It's stuck into the boxes. I've actually got to consciously go through, pick the erase, go down, erase number A, and then rewrite it here. And all of that process of rewriting it takes you out of the stream of perspective. When it's analog, what you're able to do is do it as a perspective. So everyone treat this like an arts and crafts exercise. Put it down on a table, move it around, give yourself a cup of tea, step back from it, come down, use different colored cards for different relationships, rewrite them. So for example, you might decide, like many people have, is this has been a me perspective, this has been a you perspective, this has been an us perspective. You know, this might be the past, the present, and the future. So what you end up doing is you create some sort of overarching meta relationship between the body of work. Now, we have a number of names for this. It's your corpus, it's your body of work, it's your ecosystem, and you'll hear us in the community use them interchangeably. But the way you want to look at it is it's your 10-year intellectual property plan. Now, I just want to check if anyone's overwhelmed by that. Please don't. You may only write 1 book. That might be the only one you write. But what we want to have is we want to have the full body of work scope. In fact, one of our black belts, Dr. Paige Williams, did this, and she'd already written this one, which was around anti-fragility. So that book had been published. She'd written this one, which is around accountability, which is a book called Own It. And then she was going to go, okay, and she had another book ready to go, which was one of these down here. And then she went, actually, you know what I want to do? I'm going to do 1 book called The Leader's Ecosystem, where I'm going to do an essay on each of those. And the book was made up of 9 essays. 2 of them she'd already written books on, like this one and this one. So those books got summarized as essays of the same length as all of these. Now, I know what's happened is Paige has now done that, published that book, and then she's got all of them are tied together by an overarching heuristic, which is what does good look like. And then what she did is she went and wrote what we call a concept book, which is another way of putting that as a pamphlet. So a concept book around what does good look like. And she used her weekly blogs to do it, and then she made it highly illustrated, where basically for a year she answered the question, what does good look like in life? What does good look like in sales? What does good look like in business? What does it good look like in parenting? And if you spend a bit of time around Paige, you'll realize that that heuristic is in every daily decision-making part of her life. It's her aesthetic. And it sits meta above this. So it's like this here sits as the biggest question that floats above three-dimensionally the ecosystem. Now, what you'll notice as you start to unpack your ecosystem is you'll see relationships, and I call these like secret tunnels or navigation plot points. And there'll be a relationship between these three. There'll be a relationship between those three. There'll be a relationship between those three. And what Paige is now doing with her professional academic colleague, Dr. Michelle McQuaid, is they're doing a piece of work. So this book in Paige's ecosystem is called Unbounded. And she hasn't written it yet, but it's like the essay is all about the power of boundaries. She's a psychologist, org psych. And her next book is going to be so it's Good Girl Project and Brave Boy Project. So Dr. Michelle McQuaid's doing research into what makes the good girl dynamic, and Paige is doing it into what makes brave boys. And look, they're both looking at patriarchy and dynamics of dominance and partnering. And it's a natural extension from that book. So having coded them all, dropped them into one book, she's now launching into her next decade of work. So, and only having published three books. So she did that one, and then she did that one. So you don't have to publish all 9. You don't have to be restricted by it. It's just good strategic thinking. Okay, so step number 3, come up with an ecosystem. Now, that is hugely daunting because I'm asking you to document a decade of future body of work. And it's part of what we work on in the school. It's the sort of conversations we need to have going backwards and forwards, because you can hear, Pam, that what's going to happen is that's going to make the next decision really easy. So rather than you only have one more book that you've got to consider all of them, and then we'll make a strategic decision from there. And I imagine you could have an ecosystem that was already populated, Pam, with 9 titles to do with good well-being, emotion, and that sort of stuff. And I'm going, just consider a column that's around like organizational, and a column that's around society. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so you might go,
Yeah.
there's a social perspective, a corporate organizational perspective, and a personal perspective. And maybe there's 3 trilogies. Just as thinking, right? And it's that
Yeah.
Peter Drucker who said, the strategist, he said the key to strategy is omission. And once again, we need to put them down to choose not to write them, or whatever we might do. So some of you would see that you might even have a different ecosystem for different markets. So let's say you were working with leaders, and then you were working with tech companies. You know, we've got Josh here, who's an entrepreneur founder, and Josh might have a thing around like 3 books for entrepreneurs in fast growth businesses. And that might be one row or one column. I'd be interested, Josh, to actually see what your updated thinking on that is when you've got a minute to flick it through. So everyone good? Number 1, title. Number 2, trilogy. Number 3, ecosystem. Ready for number 4? Everyone okay to move on? Number 4, I want the back cover text. So the reason why I would want you to write the back cover text, and can I suggest that if you were going to do a 12-week process about getting strategic around your book, you'd send me an email. For those in the school, send me an email every week with that deliverable. So we're now at week number 4, or, you know, if you're working twice as hard, you'd have this done by the 2nd week, doing 2 of these stages every week. The back cover is about 350 words. So it's 250 to 350 words that sells the book. Now, what you're doing is you're not actually selling the book, like, hey, buy this book. What you're doing is answering 3 primary questions on the back cover, and they are to do with importance is question 1, urgency is question 2, and credibility is question 3. So the way to think of those is you're going, why this book? That's the importance. Why now? So you place it in time, so you give it a sense of urgency, and then you answer why you. Now, is that the perfect back cover? I go, no, but it's a good enough one. And you could master in perfection in book writing. And I reckon if you try to master imperfection in book writing, what you'll do is you won't get any books done. So let's just good enough will get us there, right? So back cover answers 3 questions. Can I get a thumbs up that everyone's okay with that? What I do is I find books that I wish I'd written and I look at their back cover. And then that's a platform that I can then launch from. Now, if you want to be more specific around it, the curriculum teaches you to look at classic, contemporary, and current bestsellers, which is classic is 10 years or more, current is in the last 5 years. I now reckon that's shortened to the last 3 years. Contemporary, sorry. And current is it's come out in the last year. And those time horizons are shortening over the decades I've been teaching this. That's been shortening. But everyone gets the idea, an old book, a not so old book, and a current book. Everyone cool with back cover? All right, let's get to, you've written the back cover, you've got the book title, you've got where it fits. What do you do now? Well, I believe that step number 5 is you want to write a 1,500 word manifesto. And I'm giving you word counts because you've got to know when to stop. The manifesto will come possibly before the introduction, or it will be the introduction. But I don't want you to write an introduction, because an introduction requires an overview of the book. What I want you to write now is to take the back cover text, the why this, why now, why you, forget about the why you, and now it's a manifesto. And when you think of manifestos, they've got to have a sense of revolution to them. It's got to have a sense of follow me. And it's got to have a sense of this, I believe. Okay, so if you think about what's the quality of a manifesto, it's here's a better world that I think is possible. It might have a contrast frame in it where it might go, this is the way people see the world. I want to suggest this is the way you could see the world. A contrast frame is a posh name for 2 columns. So for those who are in foundation program and only just starting out, we call it a contrast frame, but it's just column A, column B. And you're basically saying this is the way it was, this is the way it could be. So in a manifesto, it's got this, I believe. So it's got a bit of rant in it. It's got a bit of stance in it. Martin Luther King Jr. said, show me a person who doesn't stand for something and I'll show you one that'll fall for anything. So we're looking for something in it that's a call to action. I can see Sarah's here. Sarah paddled the Nile. She's got a whole thing about boldness and a new book called Gulp. And as Sarah's working on the new book, the manifesto needs to talk to why do we need to stretch ourselves? Why do we need to get out of our comfort zones? What happens when we do, Sarah? It's got to have why did you do it? It's then got to talk a little bit about, you know, why'd you paddle the Nile? And then it's got to have some things like your insurance risk reversal background. So it's got to talk a little bit about, it's not about being stupid, it's about being smart as you do it. So you can see that the manifesto in itself is something that I would send to the publisher for a business plan. Now, last year, 20 non-fiction books were published in Australia and New Zealand by Wiley. Wiley is the Southern Hemisphere's most prolific non-fiction publisher. And 17 of the 20 books were business school alumni or current students. We got Simi as the most recent that's been picked up by Wiley with her new book on productivity bliss, productivity joy, which is about 5 minutes of bliss. Sorry, got the title a little wrong there, Simi. And congratulations, because it's like Formula One. There's only 20 seats on the world stage. And so Simi's got herself one of the 20 slots for this current 12 months of publishing. Okay, so the manifesto, and the reason I bring that up is Wiley asks for a business plan around your book before they'll commission your book. And the business plan is how are you going to get readers, how are you going to sell your own book, how are you going to promote it, because they want to lessen their risk around it. But a key part of it, I reckon, is to write a manifesto, which is like a call to arms, a follow me, a get around this as an idea. So Paul McGregor will be writing, he's on the call, he'll be writing a book around the power of facilitation. And basically what Paul's going to do is he's going to have to bring out that there's a lot of noise, not a lot of signal. There's a lot of talking, but not a lot of understanding. that what we need to do is listen more than we speak, and the revolution for the future is consultative leadership. And so the whole manifesto is going to be about why you don't want to talk at people, but you want to talk with people, or something like that. Everyone good? Step number 5, a manifesto. Target 1,500 words, a little bit of rant, a little bit of stance, a little bit of positioning. It takes the back cover and then sort of expands on it. So there's a bit of an order to this, because I think if you follow it through with this process, you'll unpack a book strategically, and the project goes from daunting and overwhelming for anyone doing it for the first time to actually possible. And that's my goal in today's call. Does anybody want to check in on the manifesto? Because the rest is going to be very admin-y, not conceptual. Anybody got anything coming up so far? Yeah. Hey, Paul.
Question about titles, right back to number 1. What are your thoughts on creative versus descriptive titles?
If they are creative, I like them to be like where you're owning a word. So lean would be an example. So Eric Ries wrote a book called The Lean Startup. And basically he took the idea of minimum viable product, which is get ideas out to market before you overspec them. And I really liked Lean Startup. I really liked Linchpin, which is a metaphor, but which was Seth Godin's I talked about earlier. The reason I like it is you can feel like a cog in a machine. And what he did is he kept the machine metaphor, but made it about being indispensable, a linchpin. So he kind of lived into the metaphor. So I really, really like that. In over-dominated spaces, so one of the enemies to writing a book is to go on Amazon or go into a bookstore. Because you basically look at all the books that have been written on, say, leadership and go, why would I bother? So please bother, because we haven't had one through your lens. So I just want to say that's not a question. I would encourage you to put that question down if you're going to make a success in a thought leaders practice. Like I said, I've written a bunch of books. None of them have become bestsellers, but they all generate the $1 million a year practice. And I'm more interested in the $1 million practice than I am in making money for publishers at 10% on $22 a book. So just know the game you're playing. So Paul's question is around creative versus just factual. If it's a saturated market, be creative. If it's not, just be straight up. And that's kind of like, we'll then do it. We'd have to do it on a case-by-case basis. But that might be a good enough lens to think through. Did you want to expand on that anymore?
No, I think that gives me my answer, because leadership books is a pretty saturated market.
Yeah. Yeah, yours could just be ask, don't tell. Yeah, the need for excellent facilitation in leadership, or the need for excellent facilitation in business. Or ask, don't tell, the leadership shift your organization demands. That'd do it. Good enough to get going. For those who don't know, Paul's believes that facilitation is the key to engagement and enrollment, and he'll go from there. Joe, you can see some relationships that's sort of like an operational way to activate open strategy, which is good. Everyone cool? Let's go to number 6. All right. What I would like is now an outline, which is 10 chapters with 3 bullet points. That's an easy deliverable, isn't it? Now, you might do 12 chapters, you might do 7 chapters, who knows how it's going to end up. But at this stage, 10 chapters, 3 bullet points. You might have 5 sections, 3 sections. The maths might change, but start with that. And I'd love like 12 emails for people in the school over 12 weeks while you're writing a book, or 12 months while you're writing a book. I'd love 12 emails. Here's my title thoughts. Here's my trilogy. Here's my ecosystem. Here's the back cover text on the one we've locked in on. Here's the manifesto. Can you see that this process of backwards, forwards, you'll get a book done, and we'll get progress around it. So the outline's very straightforward. Everyone cool with number 6? We're halfway there. Any questions on the, like, 10 titles, 10 bullet points, 10 chapter headings, 10 bullet points? Don't worry about your intro. Don't worry about your conclusion. It's 10 content chapters, and it might be 6, it might be 9, it might be 5, it might be 14. Doesn't matter. We're just trying to kind of get over the project's inertia. Book writing has an inertia to it. I love Scrivener, Mark. I love Scrivener because it helps you write like PowerPoint, helps you think, where you can move ideas around. But what I want to do is I want to get off Scrivener when I'm trying to get to word count. So Scrivener is an app you can download. It's platform agnostic, Mac and PC. It keeps word count for you. And it's like you're writing, but your writing sits like cards, like PowerPoint slides that you can then drag and drop and move around. It's a really cool app. I'm using it for Leadership Landscape, but I'm using it because I need to be able to very quickly navigate to like 52 locations. I've got to jump around. And a Word document with its contiguous nature, where it just flows on, is a pain in the ass because you keep reading the first 5 pages. For those who don't want to use Scrivener, what you're now going to do is set up 10 Word. This is 6A. So this is not an extra step. So everyone, if you would, you're going to do, so 6 was to write an outline, which is 10 chapters with 3 bullet points under each. You're now going to set up a Word document for each chapter. Don't keep it as one big Word document because you don't want to be reading the beginning all the time. Number 7, you're going to do 150 words to introduce each chapter. So you've got 10 times 150. So in the Word document, you do 150 words, stop. 150 words, stop. And this is the 150 words that's going to be possibly, from a design point of view, it might be like done as 14-point font, and then the text might be 12 or 10-point font. If you look at any of my books, but particularly Next, you can download all my books off my website, mattchurch.com. Next has been written where you can actually go, oh, there's the 150 words. There's the 250 words. I can see it. Right, so it's 150 words, give or take. So 150 to 300 words, but keep it tight, times 10. So, because what will happen is you don't want to write too much, because the 150 words is making you go, no, that point should be in another book. Actually, that's a sub point of that. And so what happens is your 10 will collapse and expand, and you're going to have to go back to number 6, and 6 and 7 are going to have an iterative loop where they're going to sort of improve each other. You're just writing 150 words to introduce each of the 10 chapters, and you just write them in each of the blank Word documents that you've titled based on the chapter. Now, can you see if chapter 7 changes, you just make it 5, and then you move number 5 to 7, so you can move your chapter order. If the 150 words doesn't feel like it carries a chapter, you delete it and go, that's a sub point somewhere else, and you drop it into one of the other Word documents. That's step number 7. All right, step number 8 is now you do 150 words on the 3 bullet points. So what you've got is 150 by 3 by 10, which is going to get you another 4,500 words. I'll just say that again. You're going to go the 10 bullet points. You know how you had 3 bullet points under each chapter? It was chapter 1 with 3 bullet points, chapter 2 with 3 bullet points, chapter 3 with 3 bullet points. You're now going to write 150 words on the bullet point. The reason I like 150 words is it's about a paragraph. Now, if you want to go to 250, knock yourself out. If you want to do 50, try harder. Everyone good? Okay, great. We're now up to number 9. And this is where most people start, and this is what bogs them down. So most people start with what are some stories, some case studies, and some research that I want to share. But I don't want you to think about that until we get to number 9. All right, we're in number 9. And now what I'm doing is I'm going, okay, find a story, now put it in a chapter. Find a bit of research, put it in a chapter. And what you want to do is each story, each piece of research, or each case study that you want to share, which is the bottom third of your pink sheet for those that are, playing at home, is you want them to be about 500 to 750 words in length. All right, so tell a story about going to buy milk. Tell a story about the first time you walked through, Barcelona, and you're on the Rambla, and you had you had this epiphany of some kind. Remember, personal stories are just one source. Historical stories are great. Anecdotal stories are great. And I think I said historical, didn't I? So personal, historical, and anecdotal. I also like iconic stories. Write a story about someone you admire. So now you've got to number 9. I reckon it's time to edit. Now, you go back, and what I hope you've noticed by now, there was no editing to this point. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get flesh on bones. We're not editing, is it any good? Because until we get to this, which is going to be about 15,000 words, 12 to 15,000 words is where you're going to land. By this point, you're going to go, okay, I've got something here. And this is worth finishing. And now you go, here we go. Right, number 10, you edit it. Go through it. Decide if it's got work. If it has got work, this is now the writing. You now begin writing. So we haven't really begun writing until now, where we get to step 11, where I go upgrade everything. If you've done pink sheets, step 11 will be less effort. It'll be less onerous because it's already upgraded. If you've done the thinking of left brain, right brain, clear concept, top and bottom, you've stacked pink sheets, so you've got a hierarchy of ideas, then your content's just going to flow. So basically, unpack your pink sheets is another way of saying 11, but you would have already strategically done the other stages, the first 10 stages. Everyone cool? We're at 11. We've got one more step, and I said this is like a clock, so this is 12 and 1 are going to have a close relationship. And you have to allow Ken Wilber from Integral Theory, he put two beautiful not paradoxes, two beautiful concepts together, which is iteration, which is things get better over time. Iterative evolution. So iteration is things get better and they evolve over time. And he put it in a spiral like Don Beck and Claire Graves did with spiral dynamics. So where we started with the book and where we are now, there'll be a clear through line through the spiral. But it's quite possible that where you end up now at 11 is you go, this is not the book I started with. And you need to give yourself permission to shed to make a better book. I was listening to 3 Pulitzer Prize winners on a radio interview. That shows you how long it goes. Does anybody listen to the radio anymore? So they'd call it a podcast now, but it was a radio interview. And they said, what's the key to writing a Pulitzer is you write the manuscript and then you burn it. Can you imagine that? Because they're writing 90,000 words. Write 90,000 words and then delete it and start again. And they say the work of writing the 90,000 words makes the next one better. But can you imagine for us who were trying to get to word count and just stumble across the line where we're going, why would I delete 5,000 words? That pads out the book. But if you can understand that the best practice model is that kind of write it all, delete it, and start again, you'll write something that an AI can't. All right, so number 12, everyone ready? Number 12 is embed commercial. All right, so step number 12 is embed. So now what you do is you go back and you go, is there a sentence I can put in here? Is there a paragraph I can put in there that's going to make it explicitly commercial? And the way you should think about this is it's like humble bragging. Have you seen on social media where people go, oh, I'm so so blessed. Here I am in Hawaii running a conference. Wow. Thank you, everybody that got me here. So it's got a humble brag to it, right? And I'm taking the piss out of it. But when you write, you want to insert the same sort of thing. So you want to insert something like, I got off stage. One of your stories will be, I got off stage once. It was an extraordinary event, 15,000 people in Tokyo. And I was honored to receive a standing ovation. So now I've embedded, I speak, I'm world class, and I speak everywhere, man, right? So it's got some humble brag. And quite often when I get off stage, people say, blah, blah, blah. And it was that question that I was asked again and again by audiences that made me realize that this might be the single most important idea for psychological safety in the workplace, or whatever it is that you're writing your book on, right? So don't try too hard when you're writing the book to do this in, because there's a different way of being, because it's humble brag, not unpacking content, and you break the social contract between reader and author. The reason why audiobooks work so well and books work so well is there is an extraordinary, so first of all, without video, we know that podcasts are working well because there's an intimacy in audio only. Have you noticed? Like if you could turn the camera off and just listen to me, this would be a different experience than watching me. So the reason why, because there's an intimacy. But when someone reads, knowing that many people don't, they create something even more intimate, which is you become a monologue, dialogue in their head. And when that happens, people have a relationship with your ideas that's almost like a Trojan horse. They've brought it into their inner sanctum, and they're having a conversation in their inner sanctum around it. So that's why there is still an arbitrage. It was one of the arges. So it's basically an unfair advantage. If you write books, you have an unfair commercial advantage. And that's to do with this intimacy. So number 12, so that's why I'm saying embedding comes after writing, because you stay in that intimate social contract and then you go back and layer the humble brag through it. Now, it's not a humble brag. I'm just using that as a metaphor. What it actually is you're embedding commercial invitations. I basically want someone to read a couple of sentences and go, oh, Fiona helps us with our AI strategy. You know, and she helps professional services firms mainly, you know, whatever it might be. So I want that piece to be put as a layer. Now, can you see that when you go and do that with a 30,000 word manuscript broken into 10 chapters, it changes the title, because you can go back and redo the title and go, actually, let's go back to number 1 again. Once you've changed your title, you've then got to go to step 7, where you did 150 words across the 10 chapters, and you've got to rewrite those 150 words so that they've got the new title positioning in them. Because a title is effectively a frame for the book. And I don't think people are tight, loose enough on title. So be tight at the beginning, loose throughout, and then tight on the end. And I reckon this 12-step process, which we've done in under an hour, could help you write a book more effectively. So for those that are in the business school, lots of love. Send me stuff. If you want to do a 12-week campaign to get your book done every week, send me one. And don't just go, here's my title. Just go, here's all the titles I considered, but this is the one I'm focusing on for this rationale. Here's the trilogy, and here's why I think of it, and here's how it sits in the ecosystem, and take a series of steps to get yourself to that point, and things will be amazing. Lots of love. You're good. Join the school. Talk soon. Bye.